Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well this evening. And thank you for tuning in to Horizon's second community webinar of the year, titled Report Writing, the Good, the Bad, the Ugly. Now, before we get started, introductions are in order. And I'd just like to mention that my name is Brian. I'm here to help you out with anything Horizon related. So if you have any you need any technical support, or you'd like to speak after the session, feel free to reach out to me. You can chat with me or reach out using the contact information on screen. And of course, the man of the hour, we've got Mr. Alan Carson, president of Carson Dunlop, who's here to share his insights. How are you doing tonight, Alan?
Ryan, it would be really good if I can get through so I can be talking out loud.
Fantastic. I can hear you just fine, and I'm sure everyone else can at this point in time. Perfect. Hey, Dennis, thank you so much. We can all hear you. I appreciate that, everyone. Shame on my computer. All right, fantastic. All right, well, before I pass the reins over to you, sir, I just want to explain how everyone can participate. I can see so many people are already posting their comments, which I do appreciate. But there's going to be a control panel on the right side of your screen, my friends. 3 key functions I'd like you to be mindful of. First, you can expand or minimize the control using this orange button. When the control panel is expanded, choose your preferred audio method. If you do select phone call, there will be a toll-free number. You can dial in and listen by phone. Otherwise, you'll listen through your computer speakers. And of course, questions. So many of you are already submitting them, which I do appreciate, and confirming that you can hear Alan. That's critical. So submit them at any time. Although we will not be stopping for Q&A throughout the presentation, I will be reserving all questions for the end. And at that point in time, we'll go through them with Alan. If you experience any technical difficulties, though, submit them, and I'll try to troubleshoot with you during the presentation. All right, enough of me, and on to the man of the hour. So, Alan, I'm going to pass the reins over to you, and if you'd be so kind as to lead us through.
All right, let me get the screen set up properly here if I can. Try this.
A number of people are commenting that you do need to update your photo, though, sir.
No, I need to update my my haircut situation at a personal level so I look more like that picture. That would be better. Well, we'll see. Anyway, we're going to have some controversy around that, I can see. But yeah, this Neil Young look is going away eventually, and none too soon. So thank you, Brian. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here on March 31st, the last day of March and the last day before baseball season starts tomorrow. It's such a great time of year because we've got hockey going on, we got basketball going on, we got Miami Open tennis going on. We've got the first Formula One race of the season was last Sunday. That's a great time of year to be a sports fan, that is for sure. Okay, so I am going to share with you tonight a whole bunch of stuff. And Brian yells at me because I try and cover too much ground, and absolutely rightly so. But I got a lot of little stuff. I got a couple of meatier issues to talk about, but I've got a lot of what's going to feel like shotgun type stuff coming at you. And I am so focused on making sure that people who use Horizon inspection software write the best reports in the industry, not but by a little bit, but by a wide margin. So that's the goal of the exercise. Now, as I throw stuff at you tonight, some of it you're going to say, hey, I already do that, and that's great. Wait 10 seconds and we'll get on to a new topic. And you might say, hey, that's not going to work for me. It doesn't work in my market, doesn't work with my philosophy. That's okay, we'll move on. So the goal tonight is for you to grab the things that you say, hey, I can use that, and get that right into your Horizon workflow. Now, before we get into the agenda, as I am wont to do, I have a little rant I want to go off on. So I am going to start with a discussion about super hot housing markets. And I don't know how many of you are going through it, but we here are just going absolutely crazy with our housing market, to the point, and I'm so sick and tired of people saying to me, hey, your home inspection business must be doing great because there's so many houses getting sold. A lot of people don't understand that buyers tend to skip inspections in crazy hot markets because they get talked into thinking there's no time. In some situations, we're finding no inspections are even allowed. There's no opportunity. And other times we're finding, oh yeah, you can have a 30-minute viewing slot to perform the whole inspection because we have a lot of people who want to go through this house before offers are accepted next Monday. This is the craziness that we're living in. And I'm hearing these things referred to as walkthroughs, 5-point inspections, rapid inspections, quick inspections. And it's pretty funny because I went to a bunch of websites around the country, seeing what people were offering by way of 5-point inspections. And I probably looked at 6 or 7. No 2 of them were exactly the same. So every home inspector is different. Everybody's got their own way of thinking about things. So even these 5-point inspections aren't the same from one inspector to another. Now, before I get completely crazy, Brian, can I ask you to do me a favor? And can we do a little poll? Because I want to see what percentage of our audience is dealing with this craziness of walkthroughs, 5 points, rapid inspections. So can we get that poll up?
Yeah, for sure. Just give me a second here. Let me launch that.
All right. And there should be 5 questions. And for those of you who are regulars, we're just playing the same game as usual. I think there's 5 choices there, and just pick one. Should take you 20 or 30 seconds to read them all and make a decision.
So a number of people just while we're getting the poll feedback are mentioning, inspections for, for information purposes only. And some people are mentioning it's really common in certain states like DC.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah, all the same kind of idea, which is, well, we'll get there in a minute. I'll let the poll run its course. It's one of the frustrating things for me is I can't see the poll results coming in. So Brian he's got this big screen up in front of me, I feel like, and I don't get to see what's happening there, but I'm pretty sure Brian will share the results with us when he gets them.
It's nice to have the power sometimes, sir.
No, I understand.
All right. So we're closing in on the minute mark and we're getting 80% of our participants voting in, which is well over 200. So we do appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And so I'm going to share that. Alan, just so you're aware, what we've got is we've got almost a 30-30 split. So 32% I have not heard of them. 31% I know what they are, but not been asked to do them. 26 I've been asked to do these. 5% I perform them with a report, and 7% I perform these with no report. And we got 81% of our audience voting this evening on that.
Okay, so, well, first of all, I'm thrilled that they are not absolutely ubiquitous across all of North America. So that's good news. However, the fact that there are a bunch of folks dealing with them is not such good news. So let me share with you my thinking about them. Let me see if I can put it subtly. I hate these things with a passion. I absolutely think they are horrible. I think they're bad for clients. I think they're bad for you. I think they create a liability nightmare for you. And in terms of the client services, it's kind of like if I went to the doctor for a checkup and said, can you just check, my left side? I think my right side's fine. It just doesn't make any sense. Going in to get your car checked out and say, I just checked from the driver's seat on forward. It just doesn't make any sense. And people tell me, well, we're just going to look for the big things. We're going to look at the big items. The reality in home inspection, as you know, is you don't know where the big problems are until you look at everything. So it just makes me absolutely insane. And to the 7% who are doing them and providing no report, that terrifies me, because if you check with your E&O carrier, and I hope you do have errors and omissions insurance, you will find, I think, in the ones that I have spoken to, they say if there is no written report, you don't have any insurance coverage. So be very careful with these. I think they demean the whole concept of a home inspection, quite frankly. To me, a home inspection, typically a 2.5-hour process, maybe a $600 fee. We can talk about fees a little bit if you want. A lot of us produce the report the same day. Don't tell me you don't have time to get a home inspection in. Houses are not listed and sold the same day. So if we have a bit of time on site, and if I go back far enough, when it used to be crazy, we would be out there, and sometimes there would be 2 or even 3 home inspectors in a house doing an inspection in crazy hot housing markets before people made their offers. So it can be done. The home inspection should not be clipped. It should not be skipped. It should be a real home inspection. And at the end of the day, it is, quite frankly, the single most valuable service to a consumer in the entire real estate transaction from start to finish. The home inspection adds more value than anything else that they do. To cut it short, to skip it is absolutely insane. So because I talk all the time, I have created a couple of very short one-pagers directed to consumers. And the first one is called Don't Mistake Rapid Inspections for Home Inspections. And by the way, these are Word documents, so you can take them and use them and do what you want with them. That one has my signature on the bottom. Please don't put my signature out on your web page or in your emails. Take my signature off. I should have done that. And then the second one is called Why You Should Never Skip the Home Inspection. And you can't read it up on screen, but it's the one on the right. And you can see in the bottom, I've included a bunch of links. So I gave a little bit of my rationale, but then I said, don't take our word for it. And there's 6 or 7 articles from respected people and publications about why folks should never skip their home inspection. So as I say, feel free to use either of those. Brian, these folks can grab these off the control panel, is that right?
Correct, sir. They're in the handout section. There's 3 handouts. 2 of them will be in reference to what you're talking about. I've also removed your signature and the necessary header and footer, so it's just the document itself.
Brian, you're awesome. Thank you. And while we're at it, because I got a bunch of questions after our last session, I've also had Brian put up our home maintenance plan, which is a fairly lengthy document. We've just recently updated it. If you want to use that in any of your materials, and again, make it yours, brand it your way, whatever you want to do, feel free to do that. And it's structured in such a way that it's got a home setup section for when people buy a house. And then there are seasonal instructions. So it's really a 5-part document. The first part is the setup, the things you do just once when you move in, like changing the locks. And then there's a kind of spring, summer, fall, and winter set of instructions for a checklist. So if that's useful to you, go ahead and take advantage of that. And again, it's in the handout section that Brian referred to. Okay. So what do we do about these rapid inspections? And I know there's no quick silver bullet on this, but what it wants to make me talk about, and I'm going to resist because we've got a lot of other things to talk about tonight, but just in passing, the real long-term solution to this kind of problem, and frankly to real estate sales and home inspection working together in general, is pre-listing inspections. And I know a lot of you are going to tell me, well, we've tried it, we can't do it in our market. And I'm going to say it takes a little work for sure. It takes commitment and it takes significant messaging. But just to give you a bit of insight, last month, more than 50% of our inspections were pre-listing inspections. And when the market is super hot and buyers are foregoing inspections, it's what carries us through. To the extent that in the month that is just closing today, our home inspection business by dollars was up 58% over last March. So pre-listing inspections can help significantly in overheated housing markets. That's my message. And I should say, and I talked about a $600 inspection fee earlier. Our average fee last month was about $648. And I'm going to tell you, for the value of service we provide, that is still way too low. I don't think about pricing things based on the amount of work it is. I think about pricing things based on how much value they bring. This is such a small fee. The way our houses are priced, our inspection fees are about 1/20th of 1% of what they are buying. So the cost of an inspection is 1/20th of 1% of the purchase price of the home. That is so crazy. And then people want to nickel and dime on those. People want to skimp on the home inspection when it is, as I said before, simply the most single valuable thing you do when you're buying a house. It makes absolutely no sense. And you know what? The rest of the world is not going to carry the banner for us. We have to speak up and do that. And that's why I've attached those Word documents. I hope you find a way to use them. Okay, rant finished for a moment. Brian, I'll catch my breath and back off a little bit. I did want to just change gears and show you something that I think is hilarious, something totally crazy. So here we are. Honey, the guys are here to start the addition. They've got the backyard dug up nicely. And don't worry, I've kept the air conditioner running. And believe it or not, this air conditioner was running. So we've got the air conditioner hung with yellow straps from the eaves. How cool is that? I won't go into showing you how old I am by telling you that it reminds me of a Warren Zevon song about desperados under the eaves, but nonetheless, that is just incredible. I don't know how the job finished off and whether the air conditioning was running by the end, but people do the craziest things. Okay, let's get on to some kind of a half-baked agenda here. And yeah, this session is either called 5 key essential report writing tools, or the good, the bad, and the ugly, depending on how I feel on any given day. So I've got 5 elements here that we're going to talk about. Some I'm just going to touch on very quickly. Some we'll go into more depth on. And then when we get to the end, I'll do something that begs a question that I'll be fascinated to see what the response is to that one. Okay, so very quickly, the customized side, I'm going to call it setup recap. And the message here, quite simply, is you need to get Horizon customized to meet your needs, the way you work, what you see in your market. So tools like show, hide, customize, getting the section titles and the items right, sorting them so the most common ones are first, editing those location task and time lists. I know you guys aren't crazy enough to give costs, so I don't even know why I put that in there. Customizing your illustrations and implications to get it exactly the way you want. And then the magic of presets that we've talked about in recent seminars. So the location task time drops in automatically when you click a button. Your notes are there and appear automatically for you. And then what I think is critically important is the summary gets done for you, so you never forget to put the item in the summary. So that's great. If you need a refresher, if you want to touch base, Brian is at hand, and he told me to offer that if you need to chat with Brian, if you have a question about how to do any of these things, he can probably direct you to something, a video or a tutorial to get you set up and into this. So I'm not going to dwell on these because we've talked about them before, but again, please set up your Horizon to work effectively for you. Now, I'm going to touch on a couple of quick things that we've done at Carson Dunlop that we haven't talked about before and are just a bit of a variation or a twist on the setup. So the first one is we have changed the words limitations, which is a heading in Horizon. You think it's baked in, but you can actually customize it, and it is dead easy to do. We call it inspection methods and limitations. We think that's more descriptive for what's in there, because you'll remember, for most of you to meet your standards, you have to tell people how you inspected the roof, for example. So the elements about how you inspected things are really inspection methods. So clients are averse to reading your limitations because they can see that that's the cover your butt stuff. So inspection methods and limitations is both a little clearer, and it's also not quite so intimidating to clients. Now, the other thing we've done in a similar vein is we have changed recommendations to observations and recommendations. And I really like that because observations is A, professional consulting kind of feel to it. B, it does describe the things that you actually did. So you made some observations, you found some conditions, and then you made recommendations or tasks to address them. So I think it creates a nice professional feel to your report and is really good messaging. And so you can do these by going, you're on any screen in Horizon, you're 3 clicks away from getting to this screen and making these changes. So if you go to a profile, which is up in the top there in red, and then you go to section 3 report configuration and hit classifications, you come to this screen. On the right side, there's an edit button where you can change the word recommendations. And as we said, we've changed ours to observations and recommendations. And you can change inspections to inspection methods and limitations. You can change description to whatever you want, what we saw, I don't care. But you can do that in like 30 to 60 seconds here. So that is pretty cool and pretty simple. Now, one other twist on that is, if you were watching closely, you'll notice that we put the observations and recommendations first. And we do that for a couple of reasons. And you can do it again in under 5 seconds. I'll show you that in just a second. But I like it because that's really what your clients want to know. What condition is the house in? What do we need to do? What's wrong with it? And so putting the observations and recommendations first gives them the information they want. They don't really care about the descriptions, the house inventory, and they're definitely not too wound up about the limitations. Give them the observations and recommendations first. The second bonus to that is it makes your reports look great. The page balance comes out a little more nicely, in my opinion. You get those photos that you should be including with issues. It makes the report readability just a little better. So if you haven't tried it, I encourage you to do that. And you can flip it and flip it back in, as I say, less than 5 seconds. If you go to the same screen we talked about, under Profile, Report Configuration and Classifications, you just go over to the left side and click these green arrows up and down that say Sort Order. And you can make any one you want, the first, second, or third, in literally seconds. So I think that's worth trying and doing. If you're already doing it, you're saying, shut up, Alan, and move on. I get that. If you haven't tried it and scratch your head, you can try it on a couple of practice ones and see what you think of the output. I like it a lot. Not everybody does. I get that. But I wanted to share with you that we think that's an interesting thought. Let me give you another little thought on setting things up. And in location, we did this a couple of years ago, and our guys love it. And the problem I'm trying to solve is, when I find a defect in something that there are many of in the house, like electrical outlets or windows or gutters, when I find a reverse polarity outlet, home inspectors want to be so helpful. So we want to put in the report that it was on the west living room wall or whatever. Now, my problem with inspectors doing that is, are you sure that's the only one? And the answer is, of course not, because you didn't pull out the china cabinet, you didn't pull out the refrigerator and check those receptacles as well. So what we have done to deal with those kinds of things, when you're doing a sampling exercise and you're finding some defects, and you might find 2 or 3, I don't actually feel the need to report the locations of them all. I would just put various, by the way. But if you do, and I find so many inspectors are bound and determined to tell people exactly where these things are, what we did was we added, for example, at the top of the location list like this. So under direction, we just added one called for example. So you can click that, and then you can say, you know, front, second floor bedroom, or whatever it is you're going to do. But the for example, and by the way, we put it at the top and the bottom of the list because sometimes it sounds better at the beginning, sometimes at the end, whatever you prefer. And because we've got 16 guys doing this, they don't all prefer it exactly the same way. So the magic of that is you're not now tied to saying, hey, this is the only reverse polarity outlet in the house, or it's not the only window with the lost seal. It's the one you happen to see. But when you say, for example, that makes it clear to the client that there are very likely others, and that you're not doing this minutia kind of excruciating detailed inspection that it would take you 11 hours to do. We're doing a sampling exercise and carrying on. So that is something that has made our reports better, communicated better with clients, and saved our guys some time. So I like that. People ask me all the time, hey, Horizon gives me the choice between saying north, south, east, west, or front, rear, left, right. Well, I'm going to tell you, I like front, rear, left, right. And the reason I like it is I find so many people struggle with north, south, east, and west, including some of my beloved family members, by the way. So it also creates a challenge on houses that don't face directly north, south, east, west. So you get that angle thing, and then you've got to make a call, and Horizon lets you say, for the purposes of this inspection, we'll consider the house to be facing north. I prefer the front, rear, left, right to step away from that problem. But while everybody is pretty clear on where the front of the house is and where the rear is, left and right can be a bit confusing. And so what we've done is another tiny little thing in the direction part of location, we have just added one. So instead of just left and just right, we have those, but we've also added left looking from street and right looking from street. So we're telling the client what we mean when we say left. There's no confusion now. And so our folks use it most of the time, not all the time. It depends on the client, depends on the communication. But it's a quick and dirty little thing to do. And adding these is so super easy. And so we put them like we've got left side and then left looking from the street, right side, right looking from street. So we put them in a logical spot in here. By the way, we've removed north, south, east, west altogether and all the variations thereof so that the list is quicker and easier to read. And so that's a little trick that you might look at doing. Here's another couple of little suggestions on tasks. So you've probably heard me talk a little bit about further evaluation and how I say use it sparingly. I don't really love it at all. And that's absolutely true. At the end of the day, further evaluation is of zero use to your client. It's really a limitation. It's not terrific. What I find to be slightly better, although still not great, if you've got to do it, further evaluation and improve as needed. I suggest you give that some thought. And the reason is, when you've identified a condition and you've gone to the effort of saying further evaluation, there's probably something going on there. If you just say further evaluation, it's a bit of an open-ended, vague instruction. I prefer to give the client something that says, you're going to have to do some work here. It creates a slightly more elegant message telling them that, hey, they're going to have to do something. And you can say further evaluation and improve as needed, further evaluation and remedy as needed. I don't typically use repair or replace in these because sometimes repair or replace narrows you down too much. So the improvement might be to provide something that's missing or reslope bad grade. The word improve gives you some wiggle room and it's a little broader, and so does the word remedy. So that's why I've chosen to use those words in that little line. So I think it makes something vague just a little bit more committal to the client. Same argument on monitor. The word monitor by itself is very weak in my opinion. And what do clients look for? Do they know what they should be monitoring these situations for? A lot of times I think the answer is no. And by the way, the word monitor probably escalates your liability a little bit because courts understand why a client would ignore the word monitor because they don't know what they're looking for. They're not the professional home inspector. So be careful with monitor. Again, mildly improved, somewhat better if you say monitor and remedy when needed or monitor and improve when needed. You get the point. It's a little bit more instructive that there probably will be something they have to do. Doesn't get you completely out of jail, but it might get you closer to the key. Okay. Here's one on conditions. And we go through this all the time with roofs and furnaces and water heaters and air conditioners and heat pumps that are getting old. So Horizon gives you lots of different choices. And here's where I've landed lately. I like at or near end of life. And I like it because it doesn't tie me down too much. It's short, it's clear, and it's to the point. I am not so wild about things like approaching end of normal service life expectancy or some combination of those words, near end of useful service life. And I understand useful service life is a fairly generic term in some industries. But I think we're talking to homeowners here. I don't think we're trying to follow trade jargon. I think we're trying to communicate. And I think this does as good a job in as few words as I can come up with. In the same vein, and this is funny, we had a real heated discussion in the office about this. The word immediate is absolutely a choice in Horizon, and it applies for things, especially like electrical defects that are either electrical shock hazards or fire hazards. Anything safety related, immediate makes a lot of sense. replacement of a roof immediate, and so on. So the question became, as soon as possible, in some ways is a little less alarmist. And I think you may agree with me when I say that home buyers very often tend to overreact when they read home inspection reports. So the word immediate is a little jarring. As soon as possible is a little less alarming. But we had quite a debate because some of our folks said, as soon as possible might be a little wishy-washy, and it might allow people to think they don't really have to do it and they can defer it indefinitely. Possession as soon as possible. So there are a lot of different twists and turns on this, but here is one where we have gotten some professional advice. And if you like as soon as possible, you should feel comfortable using it as an alternative to immediate. Okay, here's another one where Horizon has got patch in it all over the place, like a bunch of times. And what we've started to do is we've added temporary repairs in here. And the reason is that when you tell somebody something is patched, what that implies to most homeowners is, hey, they fixed it and it's fine. I don't need to worry about it. Well, you and I both know a lot of the times when we see patches, we know that's probably not the end of the problem. So when I see a patch that I don't like the look of, we call it a temporary repair, which tells people it's only temporary and they're going to need to do more work soon. So that's another little, these are all little nuances that are at one level kind of advanced Horizon tips. But each one of these, I think, can help you communicate better with your client, keep it clear. Now, again, feel free to disagree with me on these and say, that's not for me, I don't agree with, I don't expect you to agree with all of them. And I could be dead wrong, and you may have some better suggestions, which I'd love to see. And if you've got them, put them into the chat for Brian. But these are things that over the years, and we've been at it 42 years, we've kind of polished and refined. And people often ask me, well, how does Carson Dunlop do stuff? And so I'm trying to answer that question in this context tonight a little bit. So I hope that was helpful. Let's move on and talk about clarity a little bit. And I'm going to start with my age-old less is more argument that, again, not everybody buys. In fact, I've had some fairly animated discussions with people lately about this. I want you to get the clutter and the junk out of your reports and just give clients what they need. And my father, who was one of the smartest people I ever knew, and he was an engineer, and he said, if you want to write a good document, never mind a technical report, but including those two, to write a good document, write your draft, and when you proofread it, try to remove every single word. Try removing the word and see if it changes the meaning. And it's amazing. It's just amazing how much stuff I end up taking out of documents after I've written them just by using that simple tool. Go in and try and remove. You can remove so much, and the communication gets clearer and crisper and simpler and more logical. And that's really the goal for me in Horizon, is to try and get your findings, your opinion of the condition of the house out of your head into your client's head as effectively and efficiently as you can. And so I'm absolutely adamant about all this stuff. You can ask yourself either, How does this help my client? Which is one of my all-time favorite questions, by the way. Or you can ask it this way: is my client paying me to do this? Give me limitations. Give me your standards of practice, Mr. Inspector. Tell me about the weather. Tell me that it's a two-story house because I hadn't noticed that until the inspection. You see how that doesn't really scratch the itch of most home buyers when they think about what a home inspection should be doing for them? And to a lesser extent, I think the problem is the same in the description section. I'm looking at buying this house. I'm a layperson. I don't know anything about construction. And you're going to tell me I have poured concrete foundations. So what? Is that good or is that bad? Is it indifferent? What does that mean to me? And you're going to tell me I have copper non-metallic sheathed conductors. Well, first of all, a conductor is the guy who's on a train to a lot of people, not the wiring in the house. They don't even understand what you're talking about. When you talk about ABS waste plumbing pipes, you and I know that's black plastic. They don't even know that it's a plastic pipe. Asphalt shingle roof. What does that mean to them? It's an asphalt shingle roof. So is that good? Is that bad? And it gets worse. And I have lots of arguments with people who say, well, you should tell them they're laminated architectural shingle. Unless you explain what those are and the benefits of them, putting those words in a report is not very helpful to a client. As a tiny sidebar, I can't resist asking you all to say out loud, and you're all muted so you can say it as loudly as you want. The last bullet item there has 3 words in it. Can you just say those 3 words out loud to yourself? If you said asphalt, I'm going to ask you to read the word more carefully. Almost everyone says asphalt. It's really asphalt. There's no H after the S. That's a small rant from me that nobody will ever notice, but it made me feel better to say that. Okay. So what does your client want to know? They don't want to know about your limitations or your standards particularly. What they really want to know is, should I buy the house or not? And please don't tell them whether or not to buy the house. So failing that, they want to know what condition is the house in, and if there's stuff that's broken, what do I need to do? That to me is our raison d'etre. It's why we exist. And this is why our horizon architecture, I think, is so critically important, because KILT, my favorite 6 letters in the world, create a clear picture of the home's condition for every component. So what is it? What's wrong with it? Why do I care? Where's the issue? What should I do about it and when? If you can tell clients that about every item in the house, you have done a masterful job. And we have so much trouble staying in this lane, and we'll talk about some of those problems very shortly. I've put over in red in the bottom right-hand corner, they'd also love to know how much it will cost. And I'm going to leave that as an open question. I doubt very many of you go down this road, but we'll maybe pursue that towards the end of the discussion. I wanted to plant that seed. Okay, so giving people that picture of the condition of the house, to me, the art and the science of home inspection is doing that efficiently. So here's what I mean. These 2 choices both do effectively the same thing. They convey the same general information. One of them is easy to read with lots of headings. The other one is a long narrative. What I really find frustrating and so typical in this narrative, home inspectors do it all the time. This roof is worn out, and they're giving me all the individual pieces of evidence that that roof is worn out. There's shrinking, there's curling, there's this, there's that, there's loss of. Clients don't care about that. If the roof's worn out, tell me the roof's worn out. Full stop. I'm done. I don't really care how you came to the conclusion. I trust you. I trust that you know how to do your job. Can you just tell me, please? What do I need to do? That's why I love Horizon, and that's why I hate so many of the reports that I read from right across North America. And they're not all this bad. They're not all great long things. They felt compelled to write a spec down at the bottom, which I'll get into later. Absolutely not part of your scope of work, absolutely out of your lane, and you're more likely to be wrong than right. Keep your life simple and do your client a huge favor and just give them what they need to know in words they understand. It's so simple and nobody does it. It makes me insane. People say, why do you have so many headings in your reports? You got headings and subheadings all over the place. And the reason is because we watched people read reports and we asked them what they were getting out of them. In the early days, we used to write reports on memory typewriters. I shouldn't even admit how old I am. Anyway, and we would give them to people and we'd sit with them and read them. Back in the early days when we were starting the home inspection in the 70s, we said, here, we hand delivered the reports and sat down with the people and went through them and asked them to read them. And people were regularly getting lost because they couldn't understand what these long narratives were telling them. And we'll get into some more problems that we throw up by way of roadblocks and obstacles in understanding. But what we found was very quickly, people need road signs. They need headings to be reminded where they are and what they're reading about. And it's like when you drive into a new city, you really appreciate good road signs because it makes your journey so much better. You're sure that you're going to get to your destination. And that's exactly why we do it. Again, so simple. Speaking of making it simple and getting to your destination, I understand we all love our jargon. We have a very special language and we're smarter than everybody else. But please don't feel the need to prove it to your clients. Please share your knowledge and wisdom with explanations of each one of these terms. And please do not stuff it in a glossary at the back. Just put it in there where they need it. Now, Horizon needs to do a better job of this. We do it in some cases, but we fall down in others. So you need to go through and say, are people going to understand what I'm telling them? And these are just a small sampling of the words that many homeowners do not understand. So it's, again, with the magic of Horizon's customized tools, you can do it once and never think about it again. So on a quiet afternoon, you can go through your database and do exactly that. And one and done. It's terrific. So let me talk about a couple of other things that will save you time and keep you out of trouble and probably avoid distracting your client, all of which I think are noble goals. I would prefer that you do not talk about what caused the problem, because how we got here doesn't matter. Where we go from here is what matters. So save yourself that grief. And let me show you the kind of trouble you can get into. And God love us for being home inspectors and trying to be helpful. But here's the kind of mess we create. There are just two sentences here, but I hate them. The roofing material was observed to have impact damage. Okay, those words "was observed to" are completely unnecessary. The roof is damaged. Okay, that's all you need to say. Now, impact damage is, they're assuming what caused the damage. More specifically, the damage may have been caused by a hailstorm. So the roof is damaged. You haven't told me what to do about it yet. And you're saying, well, it might have been caused by hail. So what? So now I've got a roof that's damaged. How badly, what do I need to do? And I love the last part, and should be further evaluated. By whom? For what? What are you going to learn? What's anybody going to learn looking at a hail damaged roof? There are only two possibilities. It's damaged beyond repair, which is fairly frequent with hail, or it's got some localized damage and it does need repair. So repair and replace are my two options here. Further evaluation, like what are people going to look at that you didn't see? This further evaluated is nonsense. The cause of the issue is nonsense, and the number of words they took to take you down this road and help you hardly at all is just not worth it. So please stay away from causes and all the other assorted sins in those two sentences. Here's another one that's equally erroneous in my, I'm going to say it's just wrong. And again, please save yourself the time, save yourself the trouble, and please don't distract your client with writing specifications either. They make me insane. The internet's a wonderful place people can go if people are inclined, by the way, to be do-it-yourselfers, which I find fewer and fewer people are. I have got 5 kids aged 35 to 23, and none of them are ever going to be do-it-yourselfers. They're very good at saying, Dad, can you help with this? But they don't care. They've got their own lives to lead. They've got their own stuff. People are moving away from do-it-yourself. So specifying repair methods, complete and total waste of time. It's also outside of your lane. It's beyond our scope. And here's the thing that really puts the nail in the coffin for me. People do it in reports and they don't do it consistently. They pick one area to do it probably because they know a lot about that particular topic. So they'll go into chapter and verse about how you ought to fix it. And then they'll talk about 5 other defects and not say a word about it. Well, if you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. You either do it or you don't. Don't pick your spots and be a prima donna. At that point, it's some kind of vague showing off, and it's really not helping your client. Here's a good example. Efflorescence. And by the way, efflorescence is not the bubbles that appear in the glass of Alka-Seltzer. That's effervescence. And I see the word effervescence in a lot of reports. Efflorescence, soluble salts that collect on the surface of masonry, concrete, and stucco, leaving unsightly stains. So A, it's a bit of a description. B, the unsightly stains is a bit subjective, and I'm not sure I'd go there. It is a cosmetic defect, substantially true, and can be removed by cleaning with a dry brush, not a wet brush, mind you, and rinsing in clear water. I'm not sure what I'm rinsing in clear water, the brush or the masonry. A heavy collection of salts may require brushing, not sure if it's wet or dry, with a solution of muriatic acid diluted with water. What? You're now telling your client to fool around with muriatic acid in some undefined ratio between acid and water. Really? This is what you're telling your client to do. You get my point. So providing specifications for the most part is a complete and total waste of the reader's time. Don't go there. Here's another one that makes me insane. Redundancy. Saying the same thing twice in slightly different words. And I will take full responsibility. Horizon makes it very easy to do because we give you the kilt, the component, the condition, the implication, the location, the task, and the time. But then we give you something called notes. And here's what happens when people abuse our notes section. This happens to be a report from a Carson Dunlop inspector. So he's up on the roof and the condition was temporary repairs. So far, so good. Now he's added a note that says, several patches were noted on the roof surface, at the skylight and various roof flashings, including at vents and the plumbing stack. These should be repaired immediately to prevent further leakage. Okay, so he has said that, and then he's gone on to have implications fill in, which is leaks and water damage. The location is skylight, vents, and plumbing stack. Sound a little familiar? And then he's put in task, improve as required, and time as soon as possible. So unless I'm missing something, he's saying exactly the same thing twice in slightly different words. He took the time to write these sentences properly. There are no errors in them, although I will confess I fixed one small typo. But he took time to do this. He put the thought together to create these sentences. And unfortunately, he wasted his time. Now he's wasting his client's time having to read 3.5 lines of text when he's already said what he needs to say and told the client the whole story. It's just so goofy. And we do it all the time. Again, everything I'm talking about tonight is not because I've seen it once or twice. I'm talking about pretty common things. Here's another one. I forget whose report this is, and it's probably just as well. So I put this one in because there's a nice picture. We're up in the attic looking down at the ceiling joists and the lath and plaster ceiling below. And of course, there's absolutely no insulation, which might work in some parts of North America. It doesn't work very well where we are. And then to those of you with a sharp eye, you might say, yeah, that kind of looks like knob and tube wiring running through that attic as well. And you're absolutely right. So I'm not going to go line by line through this, but there's a lot of words in here. So one critical error that is made here is he's trying to deal with two different defects in the same item. The knob and tube wiring issue belongs in the electrical section, the insulation in the insulation section. We don't need to be specifying a 6 mil polyethylene vapor barrier. That, again, what's that going to mean to a client? Do you think the client's going to go out and say, no, I can't use 8 mil, I can't use 4 mil, give me the 6 mil poly, I need that? They're not going to be doing that. There's just so many things. So way too many words. Let me just give you a quick glimpse of what I might take out of that one. Most of it in a nutshell. And by the way, it says typical insulation levels would be R40. Well, this report's pretty old because where we are now, we'd be talking R60. And then under task, even, I didn't take it out, but I was tempted. He says, provide vapor barrier and insulation. Well, why would you say, like, why would you just not say provide? We're talking about insulation amount inadequate. There's actually none. The word provide would have told the story for me, because by adding in vapor barrier and insulation, it begs the question for me, what about roof vents? Don't you think we should have some of those? You see the problem you get into, and do you see why I keep coming back to less is more? Shut up and stay out of trouble. Okay, it sounds like I'm a little unhinged here. You're probably absolutely right. Okay, related to redundancy, this is redundancy's close cousin. What about this one? So drink of water. So too many words. So the condition is double taps, and it's nice that he explained what those meant. Double lugs, double taps, whatever you call them. Location is in the panel in the front left part of the basement. Fair enough. Task, have a qualified licensed master electrician evaluating correct as necessary. All wonderful. And the time is immediate because it's an electrical safety issue. I could also say as soon as possible based on recent discussions. But to me, I see so many reports where the recommendation or the task or whatever they call it, or it's just in the middle of a long narrative, they spell out the qualification, who should be doing it and what qualifications they should have. I think that's a total waste of time. Here's what we do. At the beginning of the report, in the summary, we put in this simple sentence. All recommendations in this report should be addressed by qualified specialists. Qualified specialists. We don't have to agonize. I asked somebody the other day, they wanted to get a gutter contractor. In the report, they recommended a gutter contractor. And I said, in my area, we don't have gutter contractors. Most gutter work are done by roofers. Oh no, we have gutter contract. I don't know whether he was right or not, but it made me wonder. So sometimes my point is, it's hard to know exactly who should do it. Sometimes I see general contractors and I go, well, wait a minute, general contractor to repair a lost window seal. Oh, wait a sec, instead of hiring one trade, now I'm going to hire a general contractor who hires a trade just to make sure I can overpay for the job. That doesn't make any sense to me. My suggestion, as always, shut up about it and just say this at the beginning. And then when you get to that defect in the report, it allows you to do this. Task, correct. There's a double tap issue, just correct it. Elegantly simple is one of Steve Jobs' favorite phrases. It really appeals to me too. This is just elegantly simple. That's all you need to do. And again, it saves time, it saves effort, and more importantly, it saves your reader wading through stuff that doesn't help him and doesn't mean anything to him. He's not probably going to do the work anyway. Just leave it alone. Okay, here's too many words in a different way. This is in description sections. The primary siding on the house is stucco. Siding stucco. Like, keep it simple. Worse still, soffits and fascia are constructed of aluminum. Good to know. How is it good to know? What are you telling me? First of all, how many clients understand what a fascia is? Half of them? I doubt it. What's the point of telling them this? And it's not that they are aluminum, they're constructed of aluminum. Like, really? And when I back way up and kind of squint my eyes and look at this one, I say, wait a minute, why are we telling the client what the soffit and fascia are made of anyway? How is that helping them make an informed decision to buy this home? I don't get it. I have a little confession to make. We don't describe the soffits and fascia in our reports because we don't think it means a darn thing to our clients. Okay, what else doesn't belong in your reports? Maintenance tips. Those of you who have listened to me before will have heard this. Maintenance tips confuse clients like nothing else. You're telling them about big important issues and then you're throwing in generic helpful maintenance stuff that applies to any house. They don't know that it applies to any house and they're wondering how this reflects on their house condition, whether they should buy it or not. I love that you're trying to be helpful and give good sage advice. Go ahead and do that, but do that in an appendix or in a separate tab at the end, or just click the reference tab on the report publishing page and have the whole home reference book available to them as a separate tab in the report with all 480 pages on all 550 color illustrations, if you want to do all that. And by the way, our maintenance checklists are in there as well in one of the tabs on that page. It's all done for you. Please don't clutter up your reports with helpful maintenance advice. And I know you love to do it, and I know you think you're helping your client. I'm here to tell you that you're not. Okay. Consistency. I've touched on this a little bit, but let me just drill a little deeper on a couple of things. To me, consistency in almost anything speaks to professionalism, and inconsistency screams, I'm an amateur. So I think it's important. I think it gives people a rhythm. I think it gives people a comfort as they're going through. I think it's a very positive thing to focus on. So this is another thing. It's so easy to do, and we screw it up all the time. And Horizons architecture is not by accident. It was designed to help you be consistent. It is built the way it is so that you actually have to work at it a little bit to screw it up. You can screw it up, absolutely, and it happens all the time. But the idea is that every time you put in a component and a condition, it invites you to put location, task, time, and it'll do the implication for you. And with presets, it will do the notes for you and also decide whether it goes on your summary or not. If you let the bus driver drive the bus and you just go along for the ride, it's a very pleasant journey. We just talked about that, Alan. Why do you rant ahead of your slides? Never mind. Now, here's where I love notes, and here's where I think notes work really well in combination with preset. There are some things that warrant further description, and they're different in different markets. And for you, it might be FPE panels, termites, aluminum wiring, Kitec polybutylene piping, knob and tube wiring, vermiculite insulation, goodness knows. But there are things that are not boilerplate. It might be mold in an attic. It might be asbestos wrap on ductwork, whatever it is. Might be inside the scope or outside the scope, but it's something special. It might be a Zinsco panel or something. I don't know. But that's where notes really work well, because you can take the time to get it exactly right, put it in, lock it down, and you're good to go forever. You never have to give it a moment's thought again. Let me take a left turn, and I'm going to detour over to pre-listing reports. I talked about it at the beginning a little bit, and I recognize probably most of you don't do very many, so I'm only going to take a few seconds, but I did want to make this point because if you do them, I think it's important. Let's think about buyers and sellers, pre-purchase inspections and pre-listing inspections. It's hard for me to talk late at night. So do buyers and sellers want the same report? Emphatically, no. Buyers want to know what they're getting into. Sellers want you to provide a clean report with very few defects, highlight the positive features for me, please, and don't provide any scary photos. We get this pressure all the time. And if you do it, you will too, I promise you. I'm going to tell you that it is dangerous. It's a bit of a fool's game to provide different reports for buyers than you provide for sellers. Real estate community is not stupid. They will see the difference in your reports and they will accuse you of sugarcoating stuff in a seller's report. Much safer to provide substantially the same report for buyers and sellers. Your loyalty, as you may have heard me say in the past, after all, is not to the buyer, not to the seller, but to the house. Your loyalty is to represent the house in the best way you can, because that's the yardstick that you will be held to if you go to court. Your loyalty is to the house. Okay, now back to our regularly scheduled program. Thank you for those who indulged. Now, speaking of saying things positive in a report, is it okay to do? Here's 5 examples. I won't read them. I'll let you have a look and read these. So these are things that are talking in a positive nature about a house. And I have lots of discussions about home inspectors, and the discussion usually goes this way. Well, a home inspector is supposed to report the condition of the property, including whether it's in good condition. No, no, no. A home inspector is only supposed to report the defects in the property. You can see the 2 different perspectives there. Where do I land on this issue? Well, I land on it that it is okay to include positive comments under 2 circumstances. First of all, they have to be absolutely true and accurate, and I'll touch on that in a second. And then secondly, they need to be performance related to the condition of the house. So I don't want to see beautifully decorated, lovely garden or excellent views. Those are way outside the scope of a home inspection, probably subjective, and quite frankly, none of our business. The true and accurate part is a little bit of a cautionary note. So when you see a kitchen, would you say that a granite countertop provides better performance over the long term than a laminate countertop? I'm going to say probably. I'll concede that. My problem is a granite countertop may not be granite. There are so many materials, and people talk about solid surface, but I've never seen any countertops that are actually, what's the opposite of a solid surface? A liquid surface? I find that a very strange term, but never mind. But I want you to be really careful because quartz and quartzite are very different. And there are so many synthetic products now, and there are variants of natural products. You need to be very careful. So I would not go too far down the road of describing specific materials when you're talking about these positive features. So let me just go back and let you have another look at these. So these features are pretty safe to describe, let me put it that way, and not getting too fancy into specific materials and so on. I see a lot of home inspection reports that describe hardwood flooring that isn't hardwood, by the way. It looks like hardwood at first glance, but it's probably engineered wood. Probably a hardwood veneer on a plywood. So got to be careful with that kind of thing. It's one of the many reasons I hate descriptions, because being too specific allows you to be wrong. I hate that. Okay, so can you be too positive? And the answer is absolutely. And all of these words do not belong in your reports. Satisfactory, acceptable, serviceable, structurally sound, functional, or functioning as intended. The reason is you don't know. You just don't know if that furnace will keep you warm on the coldest day of the year. You don't know if that roof is going to leak when you have a strong wind-driven rain coming from the east. You don't know if that shower stall is going to leak because you're not standing in it when you're running it. Somebody standing in the shower makes the water bounce in different directions and you're not testing that. You don't know, so please stay away from all of these words and those like them. Okay, let's move on and talk about consultancy a little bit. I am so proud to be part of this profession. I love being a professional consultant. I love having a professional consulting practice. You folks have the privilege of being trusted, impartial advisors, or put another way, the unbiased third-party expert. And it is a privilege. And I think most of us love what we do and are passionate about it. And while it's a business, I think many of us are thinking of it as a calling. And it is a great thing that we do. The difference we make in people's lives every day is significant. So we should take great pride in that. And we should also be willing to take a stand, especially because we are unique in our commitment to the buyer. Again, we are probably the only ones who get paid either way. There are a couple of exceptions. I'm going to take that back. We are one of the only ones who gets paid either way, whether the house sells or doesn't sell. There are lots of people around the transaction who don't get paid if there's no deal. They have an interest, if you will. Our interest is to represent the house as fairly as we possibly can and to help our client make an informed decision. That is about as pure as it gets, and it is a delight to be able to do it. So, whoops, I can't control my finger here. This is so exciting. All right, let's try it this way. So, part of that privilege brings with it some responsibility. And in some cases, it does take courage to take a stand on something. You're getting paid for your professional opinion, and you need to offer it. I find the more further evaluations and monitors in a report, the less credible the home inspector is and the less value I attach to his or her inspection. So to me, being vague doesn't add any value. And it doesn't take a lot of skill to be vague. Any fool can be vague, and we are definitely not any fools. So we need to take this stand. And let me also say parenthetically, when you are offering a professional opinion about something that you can't see all of, but you're making an educated guess based on your knowledge and experience, make sure that you are putting it forward as a professional opinion, not as a fact. So if you see some water staining on siding, don't make a definitive statement that the sheathing and studs behind are rotted. They might be, but words like possible concealed damage are way better. So I want you to take a stand, but not go out on a limb, if that makes sense. And I understand I'm bordering on splitting hairs here, but I hope I'm being clear about the distinction between the two. Maybe I'll move on before I make it even more confusing. Let me consultancy in a slightly different way. I want you to put things in perspective. I do not want you to sugarcoat people, nor to be alarmist. I don't want the message to get soft pedaled, and I don't want you pounding your fist on the table as you're delivering it. I am perfectly comfortable with you putting things in context by saying, typical of all homes of this age, the roof is near the end of its life. So your client is in the middle of a subdivision with a few hundred houses all built in the same year or two, and you go in and tell them their roof is shot and their air conditioner is too, because they're both about 15, 16 years old, depending on what market you're living in and working in, insert your own number. But the problem is, if you scare the client away from that house and they're bound and determined to live in that subdivision, when they go to the next house and they hire you again, you're going to tell them exactly the same thing. So providing that insight, and we'll sometimes say, look around the neighborhood, all of these roofs look roughly the same. Oh, wait, here's one that's already been replaced. So you know you're coming up to replacing the roofs. So you can share that insight with them. But that sends the message clearly that the house isn't bad because it needs a new roof. That's a timing issue. And if you want to get cute, you can put words like this in your summary, and you'll find a better way to get this message across. But for example, many house systems are designed to wear out and be replaced. And that would include the roof and the furnace and the water heater and the air conditioner and the plumbing fixtures and a whole bunch of things. Just like your clothes and shoes are designed to be worn and then to be replaced. So it is not a bad house because it has some old systems. So that is very helpful to first-time buyers and the new people. So if it happens to need a roof and a furnace, that doesn't mean the bones of the house are bad. It has nothing to do with that. It's a timing issue. And yeah, that's part of the life cycle of a house. So putting that perspective, I think, is very helpful, especially to people who are by and large overwhelmed with this whole process. Giving them that stand back visibility as to what's going on in their house, I think is super helpful. Now, again, you may disagree with that, and your points are probably as valid as mine. This is one person's opinion. I happen to think people like it. Your clients may disagree. What else am I going to talk about in terms of consultancy and being a professional? Well, I'm going to say, as a professional, it's okay if you don't know something, because very few of us know absolutely everything. So it's okay not to know today, but given technology and how easy things are to look up, and I won't go into all the different ways you can get the answers, I'm simply going to tell you that by tomorrow, submitting and following up with the answer. Those are the things that professionals do. It's easy. You do not lose face. And I understand the newer an inspector you are, the more insecure you are about admitting you don't know something because you feel that everybody else around you knows it except for you. Get over yourself. If you've taken decent training, that's not going to be the case. And even the most experienced veterans see stuff they don't know. On Saturday, and we, among our 16 guys, one of the guys sent out a note saying, hey, here's what I'm seeing on the inside of this living room wall. What do you guys think? And when I say what do you guys, I mean guys and women, because we have 2 female inspectors. What do you guys think is a great question. And so the client got the benefit of the collective wisdom of a group of people offering an opinion and coming up with an answer. And as it turned out, our inspector's instincts were right. He thought, I think this is what it is. And then he got enough reinforcement, follow-on questions to be able to verify that was the condition. So super valuable, easy to get the answers, but you've got to be willing to take a stand and say, I don't know, let me look into this. And it is okay to do, believe me. Okay. I like to say, if you're going to play the role of a professional consultant, you should use the appropriate language. And I'm going to tell you that these words don't help you in a report. Problems, deficiencies, defect, adverse conditions, issues, and concerns. The reason is they're distracting to your reader and they're disturbing a little bit. So we tend to use words more like observations, recommendations, conditions, and findings. And I particularly like the recommendations part because at the end of the day, we are in the solutions business, not the problems business. So we don't dwell on what's wrong with the house. We dwell on what you need to do to make it right. How do I get from where I am to good operating condition? And that's why focus on the recommendations makes so much sense to me. Time for another drink. Okay. The other thing I'm going to tell you about professional reports is they don't talk to people in the first person or the second person. I hate it when I read in a home inspection report, I suggest you replace the planter. Doesn't sound very professional to me. You may want to replace this. What? That is so wishy-washy. And these three words have no place in any home inspection report. Be advised that. If you're going to tell them to do something, just tell them to do it. What do you mean be advised that? We have more words in the English language that add fluff and noise and distraction than you can shake a stick at. Get them out of your reports. Speaking of getting them out of your reports, everybody talks about boilerplate, and every software uses boilerplate, including Horizon. Here's how to look really stupid using boilerplate. Swimming pool inspection. The guy managed to pick this off a list of possible comments. Rails and/or ladders, if present, are secure. So wait a minute, I'm the client. And this sentence tells me that everything's fine. The rails and the ladders are secure, but the inspector isn't even sure if there were any there. So how sure am I that he inspected them and made sure they are secure? Do you see how stupid that makes you look? That boilerplate sentence should not exist, but it does in lots and lots of software, and you can look like a moron. And I'm going to talk about it as boilerplate, and I'm going to talk about it in a Horizon context, because if you're careless with presets and notes, you will end up with the same problem. Do not try to make your notes so generic that they cover every possible scenario. This is what you'll end up with, okay? That's what whoever was drafting these was trying to say, I want to have one sentence that fits a whole bunch of situations. It's risky business, and here's the price you pay. Elegantly simple. Sometimes the best thing to say is nothing at all. And here's a couple of examples. The siding was found to be in adequate condition. In the first place, was found to be is garbage. Secondly, saying the siding is in adequate condition. What did we say about the word adequate? You don't know if the siding's in adequate condition. You didn't go along and pull every board to see if it was well fastened. You didn't lift up every one to see if there was any rot behind or wood destroying insects. If you don't see anything wrong with the siding, move on. Don't say anything about it. Doors and random windows were operated and found to be functional. That same found to be nonsense. And again, functional. We said we weren't going to use that word. We promised ourselves, and then we went ahead and did it. And random windows are those ones that have gone rogue on us, I guess. And I don't know, they're probably part of a gang. Like randomly tested or randomly selected. The windows aren't random. You can't use an adjective like random to describe a window. It's just wrong. So other than that, sentence is perfect. In other words, get it out of your reports. Don't say anything about anything you don't have to, because what is it my mother used to say? Better to keep your mouth closed and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and prove it. Kind of applies here. Okay. I'm looking up at the time, and Brian, I don't even have a coin. Am I okay on time, or am I? Oh, I'm rambling a bit. By 9:30, I'll shut up, I promise. It's 9:20 by my watch. Okay, let's move on. Customer centric. This is so simple, and this is substantially summarizing what not only we've talked about, but what I believe we should be doing. So, summary of Horizon philosophy. The reason our reports are bullet points is they're less reading, easier to understand. That's the last thing I want to give to a client. Okay. Photos and illustrations, I love. And you can probably tell that I love them based on the way Horizon is built, because pictures really are worth 1,000 words. It would take a lot of narrative to describe that in a way that the client understands, right? And here you can look at it in what, under 2 seconds and go, oh my gosh, that's an oh my gosh picture, right? And then I love how Horizon allows you to combine an illustration and a photo to paint a really clear visual picture for a client. People say your reports have a lot of white space. I'm going, you're darn right they do, because I don't want to intimidate people with the kind of nonsense I just showed you in the slide 4 slides back. I want people to look at it and go, oh, I can get through this. This is easy. This is not going to strain my eyes. I want people to look at our reports and see this kind of stuff on the right. And I want to follow Kilt. It's just so simple. As we say, Horizon basically does it for you. Point and click. Life is simple. This is powerful stuff. By the way, on this example, I'm going to make a note down at the bottom. There's a caption. It says spindles or balusters are too far apart. Please be sure to turn your captions on. I think they add a lot of clarity to photos. And the photos don't always end up on the same page as the illustrations or the text. So putting that caption underneath happens automatically for you. You can edit it if you want, but it does it automatically. It just makes your report more readable and elegantly simple. Okay. I'm going to come to my final thought for the evening with a bigger picture discussion. Try that again, discussion. So we have dealt with a lot of what I'm going to call specific shotgun type issues. And I've given you lots of examples of you might consider doing this or that. Let's pull back a little bit and ask a bigger concept question. And my question is, do we really do enough for our clients? So I've talked very enthusiastically about all the things that I think we should be doing, but I want to go a step further. So when we say the roof is at the end of its life and should be replaced immediately, that's great. However, the client has to make some decisions based on that information. So what might the client do? She might say, well, I'm not going to buy the house. I can ask the seller to replace the roof. I can ask for a price reduction, but I really don't know how much I should ask for. And I've got to make an informed decision about whether I'm going to make an offer on this house or whether the counter offer is acceptable to me. Can I afford to buy this house? Does it make financial sense? I'm going to suggest to you that we haven't given the client quite enough information, because you told them that they need a new roof, but they don't know what it costs, and they don't have time to go get quotes in a typical real estate transaction environment. So to me, it leaves them a little bit at sea. So it would be wonderful if we could provide them the cost, because that's really the missing piece to allow them to make a good decision based on the terrific service you've provided. Brian, if I haven't put you to sleep, can I ask you to do a little poll for us?
Sure, Alan. No problem at all. Let's just get that initiated here. Give me 1 second.
Good stuff. And I was kind of joking about Brian falling asleep. My guess is he's responding to stuff on chat fairly actively, but I could be wrong about that. Okay. including repair costs and reports. And again, I don't have the benefit of seeing what people are doing, but Brian will share the results with us. 5 choices as always. Pick the one that most applies to you.
All right, so we've got a few more seconds here. I'll let everyone vote. Oh, interesting response. Very interesting.
Well, it's interesting, and you don't tell me what it is. That's just mean.
I like the cliffhanger. Well, another few seconds here. We'll give it. We've almost got 100% of people voting, which is great. Still got over 250 people tuned in, which is fantastic. So I don't think you have to be worried about rambling on. Everyone's keen to hear what you got to say. All right. We have hit the minute mark, so I'm going to go ahead and close that up, and we'll share that. So, sir, you have 51% saying I don't and don't want to, then followed up by 34% that say I don't but would like to, and then you have sort of a small contingent with 4% saying I use a third-party service for a fee, 2% I include them, use my own numbers, and 11 I include them in all reports at no added cost. So pretty interesting stats. And again,
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, okay, so those of you who don't and don't want to should probably go pour yourself a glass of something delicious. A few people are using a third-party service, but not many. Did you say about 11% are including them in all reports?
You got it. 11% including in all reports at no added cost.
Okay, so okay, fascinating. All right, so that's good to know. So I was going to say most of us don't give costs, and I think that's probably true based on the first 2 responses that we got. We've done it for 42 years, and amazingly, we have not been sued out of business yet. We're still in business. So I can tell you, you can do it, but it's hard to do. It's work for sure. So what I might suggest to you is, because it's hard to do, and because a lot of people don't do it, does that start to look like an opportunity? Could you do it and differentiate yourself and provide additional value and perhaps even earn additional revenue? There are services out there. That's why I asked about the third-party services. There are a couple out there. I won't editorialize on them. Simply say that they're out there. And it might be helpful to know, and maybe you already do know this, that the retail price for these services that provide repair cost estimates based on a home inspection report, anywhere from $70 to $100 retail. So the inspectors don't necessarily pay that, but that's what they advertise to the public as the cost of one of these services. The people who do it have told me that they've surveyed people and people are willing to pay this much and more for these kinds of services. So it's based on an inspection report. Typically, they use the home inspection report, some artificial intelligence, some databases, some technology, and some human intervention as well. Takes typically a day after the inspection or 24 hours if people want to take advantage of that service. And I'm going to do a little sidebar and say, although the intent often is to push people towards renegotiation based on the prices, I really think that it's more to allow people to make an informed decision about whether this is the right house at the right price. I do not push people towards renegotiation based on the home inspection results. A lot do, and frankly, we've gone probably too far down that road to stop, but I really wish we wouldn't. That isn't the purpose of a home inspection. It's not a beat up the seller tool, in my opinion. That's the way it often seems to get dealt with. So the way these services work is you give them your report and they come back with something for the client. So I won't go into any more detail on that, but we've only got a small percentage of people using it. So that's very helpful to know. So my open question at the end, and this is open because it is completely undetermined and undecided, but my question to you is, what if Horizon had an add-on feature that made it easy for you to add repair costs and provide that additional information to the client. And you might argue that closes the loop. Now, I think you said, Brian, 54% don't and don't want to. So those of you who don't want to be able to answer the next poll question very quickly. But let's just move to that, Brian, if we can.
Yeah, for sure. Simple yes, no there. Give me 1 second here, sir.
Oh, yeah. So sometimes the polls only have two options. And Brian, please don't say interesting and then don't tell me what the answer is. That's just too hard on my nerves.
Strange enough, this one is interesting. Sometimes you don't know what you get until you get it, right? And here we are.
It's just cruel.
And surprisingly, very quick response too, faster than any poll we've had so far this evening. So thank you, everyone. That seems you've stroked a little bit of interest there. All right, so let me 80. Okay, let's just stop it there. I think we're good. Yeah. All right. So 78% said yes, they would be interested. 22% no. 81% of the audience voted, and we still have over 240 people listening in. So pretty interesting that.
Okay, so that is interesting feedback. Let me reiterate, this is not to be taken as a commitment. This is a research question that is a bit of an open question for me. But that is a fascinating response. I would go beyond interesting to describe that as fascinating, Brian. Thank you for doing that. And thank you for sharing the results so quickly and not leaving me hanging for too long that time. I like it. Okay, let me wrap up here really quick because we're coming up to, I'm looking at the wrong clock. Oh my gosh, I'm 9:32. I've dallied too long on the polls. I'm 2 minutes late. So to summarize things, I'm going to give you a couple of key points that I think really matter. Less is more. Ask yourself, how does this help my client? All words matter, and the fewer of them, the better. And repair costs is an interesting question for somewhere down the road. Okay, and that is it for me. I cannot thank you people enough for being here. We have a tentative subject and a tentative date for the next session, which is May 12th. Inspection do's and don'ts. Brian and I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how we can add the right amount of value in the appropriate amount of time. Brian, do you want to do anything before we go to questions, or are we off to questions?
No, we'll just be sending out just a friendly reminder to folks that we will be sending out a newsletter on Friday, so a couple days from now, with a link to the replay in case you'd like to catch this. Anything that Alan's talked about, we'll also make sure there are little reference tutorials that you can check out. So be sure to check out the newsletter come Friday. And there will also be a survey that's sent out Friday as well. It is to everyone who attended. It's just going to ask a couple questions about how we can perhaps improve these webinars and things that you may be interested in future topics. So if you'd be so kind as just to give us some feedback, it would be very helpful. We can cater these better to your community.
Now, Brian, Friday is Good Friday. So are we possibly doing that Monday, or are we going to try and do it on Friday?
Well, I think because the video gets uploaded tonight, I wasn't going to do that. I'll have to defer to Diane as far as when it gets sent out. So part of me, as it is a Good Friday, let's make the assumption that's going to send out Monday, sir. Let's correct that. Part of me, my apologies, everyone. I forgot that it was Good Friday this Friday. So
well, I hadn't thought of it until you said that either. And then, yeah, I don't want to promise you something and then not deliver. Yeah, so give us until Monday, because we are working Monday, but I think most of our folks are off Good Friday. So yeah, let's commit to Monday, and we'll make that happen.
Apologies there, but yes, definitely we'll get that all out to everyone as soon as possible.
No worries.
Are you good for questions?
What?
No. Questions. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. All right. So here we go. So Jeff has a question here. We are finding that buyers are writing conditional offers in British Columbia, inspections. Do you find that's happening in Toronto a lot as well? And is there anything you can do to sort of overcome that? And this is sort of back to this is going early on to the quick inspections and such. And again, how do you really combat that?
Well, yeah, and I think it's the very devil to combat it. I think that paper that was in your handouts may be a little bit useful to circulate. Pre-listing inspections are, as I said, the longer-term solution. If you're part of an association, I think it's a very healthy discussion to have among members in a chapter or in an association. I would love for the home inspection community to say, this is not a home inspection. It does not provide enough value to make it worth any amount of money to our clients, and we're not going to do it. I'm not quite Pollyanna-ish enough to believe that everybody will stand back from doing them, unfortunately. So I don't have a clean, short, quick answer. So the information that I gave, the pre-listing inspections, and trying to discuss with your peers and trying to come up with a collective position is the only input that I can offer at this point.
A lot of the questions seem to stem in and around that, so I'm going to try to I'm going to try to sort of combine them as much as possible, not to skip anyone's question, just to try to keep things on float. I think maybe a good topic, though we've talked about in the past, is pre-listings. So, sort of in the vein of this, people are not being able to get inspections or having very short time. Is one of the solutions to that trying to get onto the pre-listing side and getting your inspection done that way? Is there any just general tips on a high level you could provide on how to make that possible this evening?
I think pre-listing inspections have not been well communicated to the real estate community. And I think, Brian, we have addressed this topic before. So if you want to go to our YouTube channel, you can find and you can play. There's a bunch of specific suggestions in that presentation. The pre-listing inspection, we have a number of things that we do. We help clients, and when I say clients, we help clients and agents understand the value. We encourage agents to use the pre-listing inspection as a differentiation tool. In crazy housing markets like we have, we'll have people getting multiple agents invited to come and see if they can win the listing. So if the agent promises a pre-listing inspection, it's a tool that others may not be offering, so it helps them differentiate. And in our market, the agent very often pays for the pre-listing inspection. So that's one thing. By the way, we typically also encourage buyers to get their own inspection for liability purposes. We also offer a half price on-site review or walkthrough under non-COVID times. Right now we're doing it by telephone, but helping the ultimate buyer purchase the house. The pre-listing inspection also lowers the liability for both the seller and the real estate agent. They're not disclosing or misrepresenting the condition of the house. There are a whole series of points that I think make for a very nice discussion with a top real estate agent. And what we have done in the past is offered to do one at no fee to demonstrate to a real estate office or to a top agent or a team the value of these and how they can help them sell houses more quickly and for more money. And in a crazy market like this, what I have found is a number of our clients have said, I'm not buying a house, I'm pulling back from the market because I can't get an inspection. If you're the seller of a house, you want as many buyers coming to the table as you can to get the highest price in the shortest period of time. If you have a pre-listing inspection, there will be buyers who will be willing to make an offer because they feel comforted by the existence and the information provided by that inspection. So a seller and a seller's agent should think seriously about pre-listing inspections as bringing more buyers to the table, especially in circumstances where it's hard for buyers to get an inspection and may hold back because they are not comfortable making an offer when they don't know the condition of the home. Sorry, Brian, you asked for a couple of points and I gave you 5 minutes. Sorry about that.
No, that was great. I think a lot of people really benefited from that. There was a number of questions that pertain to it. It's a different market here in Toronto than it does in other areas, but still, trying to break into that. There's a lot of good insights, and perhaps later this year we could maybe rehost that webinar. You're right, it is in our YouTube channel, but as times change.
Yeah.
Brad, pardon me, sir?
I just said happy to do that. Absolutely.
Brad had made a good suggestion. We were talking about setting up your location task time list. Another one was at, but not limited to. Could be another direction or location you could set up. So I thought that was a really neat one as well.
Great idea. Absolutely.
Now, in terms of as soon as possible versus immediate, uh, do you have a preference on the two? You mentioned that as soon as possible seems legally acceptable, but do you feel that one has a better weight to it, or can you sort of break that down a little bit? There's a few questions on maybe your stance on that.
Absolutely. And I didn't make it as clear as I should have. I apologize for that. I like as soon as possible better than immediate because I think it is less alarmist and I think it still conveys the message of reasonable urgency without panicking. And as I mentioned, at least I think I mentioned, the idea of immediate isn't really practical anyway because people can't do it immediately because they don't own the house yet and have to wait till they take possession, move in, and then go ahead and do it. So I like as soon as possible a little better than immediately. It doesn't make immediately wrong. I think it's a nuance that makes it a little easier on the reader and a little smoother report.
Thank you. Chris wants to know, can they share the handouts you provided to their real estate friends and they can share it to their clients as well? Is that okay?
Absolutely. That's the idea.
Fantastic. Awesome. Right. Let's see here. Now, with regard to the CSA standards, they don't require anything in the description. So, when it comes to that in Horizon, is it just regarding the descriptions altogether? It's a bit unique for that standard versus anything else, to say the least.
Yeah, the CSA standards are a little different, and your required items should reflect that. We didn't talk about that in setup, but that would be one of the setup things. So you want to gear your required items to meet the standards of practice to which you work. And I can tell you that we have turned off, hidden, if you will, a lot of the description items because for the reasons that I mentioned, they're not hugely valuable to the client. And if you get it wrong, it can be costly. And I think I may have told this story in one of our sessions last year about someone describing a roof as a slate roof when it turned out to be recycled rubber. That was expensive. So describing things that you don't have to describe, why take on the risk? So yeah, CSA standards are nice that way. Very, very little required on that side.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Daryl has a comment. What do you think about specifying a specific type of caulking for simple repairs, say to the exterior or interior defects? Is that okay or borderline?
It's okay. It's, how can I put this so that it makes sense? A specific type of caulking because you happen to know that, and I understand that that's helpful, might be useful, but if you're not consistent throughout the report with providing what materials should be used for repairs, like I don't think you would probably write a specification for waterproofing a basement, for example. Exactly what type of liner you might put in a masonry unlined chimney with a wood burning fireplace. So it's that consistency thing that gives me a little pause. And again, it might be useful if the guy is a do-it-yourselfer, and caulking is something that a lot of people would do it themselves. And so they might go to a store and buy the right type of caulking with your advice. So I don't hate it, but I don't love it because it's not consistent across the report. So I don't feel strongly, and I understand and appreciate the sentiment of trying to give your client good advice. It's just, it leaves that gap for me. So I find that a little bit, we don't do it, by the way, just because we want to be consistent.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, actually, second question, would you also specify adjusting the water heater temperature in accordance with manufacturer instructions?
Yeah, I think that that's a safety issue, and so B, I wouldn't tell them how to adjust it. in terms of that specification sort of thing. But yeah, if the hot water is too hot, you want to tell them to adjust it to and appropriate levels. And yeah, whether it's manufacturer's recommendations is generally a good, safe thing to say because you're not being specific. You're saying, and you're not even saying which manufacturer it is. I like that approach. And yeah, I think that's an important recommendation to make because it is a safety thing, and that would be an immediate or soon as possible for me in my report. But yeah, that's one I'd go ahead and do without getting too specific again.
Thank you. Dennis has an interesting situation here, and I'm going to try to interpret as best I can. So, if you talk about a GFCI, for instance, in the kitchen, and explain its importance rather, and don't mention it in the bathroom, as an example, and then you unfortunately get into a lawsuit, the judge may come back and say, "Well, why didn't you mention, it in the bathroom versus, say, the kitchen, right?" And how can that come back to sort of bite you in the butt? So, for this gentleman, he makes a specific note about every instance, right, in the report, so that way there's a clear cut. Here's the situation in the bathroom. Here would be that. How would you propose addressing that? Is that how you address that, or going back to the kilt method where you have the one condition for everything and you've got the location? How does that sort of come about, and how would you propose addressing that for both report writing and then obviously from a legal perspective?
Yeah, and the question was asked in a little bit different circumstance than the one I described in my comments. So it's an interesting question. So if I heard it correctly, you found a GFI in the kitchen, which is appropriate, but there wasn't one in the bathroom, and you failed to mention that there was not one in the bathroom.
You got it.
So the for example doesn't help you in that situation because you simply didn't recognize the issue. If you want to get cute, if I was going to end up in court over that one, I might have said, the reason I did not call out the missing GFCI in the bathroom is that often that outlet would be protected by a GFI wired upstream, and we would not know that during a home inspection, so we do not call those out. So that would be a wiggle answer. Another might be, at the time, GFCIs were not required and we're not doing a code inspection, and codes are not retroactive anyway. So to me, stepping back from the wiggle, trying to get out of the issue approach, to me, it's kind of a miss in a home inspection not to at least question the absence of a GFI in close to water, especially kitchens and bathrooms that have been there, and exterior receptacles I would throw in. So they've kind of been required for quite a long time now, and I find it okay. Some home inspectors make them urgent and adamant. I don't. I call them as improvements and often say they can be done when making other electrical improvements to the house. So I don't make it a terrifying immediate issue, not a life safety threat, because houses have for very many years not had GFCIs in bathrooms and kitchens. But it is an improvement that is consistent with modern building standards, which is a way to not say code, but to talk about it as current building practice. So that particular issue is tricky and easy to miss because of the one protecting many, or if there's a GFI at the breaker, of course, it protects everything on that circuit. So you may not see any in any bathrooms. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think the good home inspector is at least going to raise the question and perhaps not be definitive about seeing nothing in a bathroom in a house where you would expect to. Not a great answer, but I'm kind of rambling, but I'll shut up and that will fix the rambling problem.
No, it's great. I know it's a complex question. And I mean, as a compliment to that, you mentioned not describing things like softened fascia, but let's say you're in an area where termites are quite popular or common, I shouldn't say popular, but common. And as such, right, how would you propose, maybe there's no active termite damage or things at this present time, but it's going to very be likely in that area or for the home. What would you propose? How would you propose addressing that report? Is it in the description? Is it perhaps a preventative thing in the recommendations, or how does that come about?
We come across that all the time, and we put a recommendation in our report indicating that the house is in an area susceptible to termites, and while no damage was identified, we would recommend inspection by a specialist. And in our area, you can set up a program to protect yourself against an infestation. We would also go on to say if there was wood soil contact in the house, we would recommend breaking the wood soil contact.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm not sure. How do you report on federal pioneer panels with stab? I can't see the last
Stab lock?
Yeah, thank you. Stab lock breakers. I was trying.
We don't make as big a deal of them as many other inspectors do, in part because our community here locally hasn't universally condemned them. There's also a fairly controversial, I believe it's a Consumer Reports article on them that is ambiguous, shall we say. So I think you need to deal with the community that you live in. And if it's a highly publicized problem, if electricians 10 times out of 10 will call it out, I think you need to go with that. If home inspectors in your area 10 times out of 10 will call it out, and FPE is not the only one. And yeah, it's Federal Pioneer in the States and Federal Pacific in Canada. And for a while, there was some discussion about whether it was really the same company and whether they were made in the same place and made the same way. And the answer to that question seems to be yes, whether you're in Canada or the US. So to me, it's partly a business decision for you, and I would probably base it on what your market conditions are. So I think there's a risk in being out of step with what the other professionals are saying. And if you're not sure, I think it's wise to talk to some electricians. And if you can talk to the electrical authority in the area, they may, if the electrical authority takes a strong position on them, then you should be consistent with that. So I'm not saying you should be a code enforcement kind of mentality person, but I'm saying that you take a risk if you're out of step with what the consensus opinion is in your professional community.
Thank you, Alan. And just for clarity, for anyone that's curious about how some of the changes are made that Alan had pointed out, like rearranging your sections or changing the custom titles, we will include some tutorials in the follow-up email that's going to be sent out no later than Monday, so that way you can refresh your memory on how those changes are done. We didn't go into the how-to this evening, but I'll make sure that those are included and you can get that taken care of very easily. So please, if you do need that assistance, we'll make sure to take care of that for you. Alan, I think we have time for perhaps maybe one or two more questions, and we can cap it off. Oh, friendly reminder, folks, that for anyone looking for their CEU certificate, it will be sent out by email to everyone that's in attendance. You're going to get that tomorrow. It's done actually automatically, so you'll receive that by email, and it'll have all of the necessary information for your applicable associations. Okay. Now, let me see here. Chad has a question. In my area, or statement, my area, agents won't deal with you if you put in cost estimates. That's a concern. The concern is accuracies and costing, then using your number for negotiations. Have you encountered that with agents you deal with? How have you sort of overcome that? Thoughts?
That's an interesting question. Because we have done it since day one, and some of our competitors in our marketplace also give costs, I have never had, I'm going to rephrase that, I have never had a reputable agent take issue with us providing costs. And I hesitate to say this, but my gut reaction is agents who do not want you to give cost information to your clients may not be the agents you align yourself with over the long term. That's a pretty political answer, but you know what I'm saying. We find in a lot of markets, and I'll ask you to raise your hand, but I can't see the answers, and Brian couldn't do a poll this quickly, but I'm wondering if any of you use the action list tool in Horizon, which allows buyers and their agents to extract stuff from the inspection report and use it in the agreement addendum to go back to ask the seller to either fix things or replace things or adjust the cost or adjust the agreed amount of the purchase price. So that tool exists, and you might, if you're finding, I'd really love to know more about how agents can justify not giving costs. And again, that's a discussion we can't have in this forum, unfortunately. But yeah, I would love to know whether that's a general consensus across all the agents in your community or whether that's a few. I'm hoping it's just a few, because I quite frankly find that undefendable from the position of the real estate sales professional. And I'm scratching my head. I'm hesitating because I feel like I might be missing something in the question or in the answer, something I haven't thought of. As I say, it's outside of my world because we've been doing it for so long. It's so second nature to us and to all the agents that we deal with, by the way. Now, one of the things that I find that's different in different parts of America is we do not, like a lot of home inspectors do, we do not automatically send a copy of our inspection report to our agents or to the client's agent. We typically send it to the client, and if they want to forward it to their agent, they do so. So different communities and different markets work differently. In a lot of areas, the home inspectors automatically provide the reports to the client and the agent. And by the way, if you do that, you should put in an opt-out option in your agreement for the client to say, I don't want it to go to the agent. But a lot of people, that's the normal course of events. And maybe that's typical of the market where at least some agents are saying don't include costs. But I'm a bit unhappy to hear that. And I don't quite understand. At one level, I understand the logic, but I don't think it's a defendable position, as I said.
Thank you for the excuse me. Thank you for that. And I think a perfect complement to that question is, in general, do you feel that including cost estimates increases your liability as a home inspector?
The obvious answer to that is yes, it probably does. The slightly more practical answer to that is it doesn't seem to have increased our liability over the history of Carson Dunlop. We have very few complaints. Now, let me give you a little bit of explanation that might help make that answer make a little more sense. When I talk, first of all, we never use the word estimates because that sounds like a quote, and we're not giving quotes and we're not giving estimates. We're giving ballpark costs is the way we frame it. And when we do it, let me back up before I even say that. The purpose of doing this is to give clients an order of magnitude sense of the problem. So when I tell my wife that we need a new roof on the house, if I told her it was going to cost $2,000 or $8,000 or $16,000 or $24,000, she would probably believe all of those numbers because the average homeowner doesn't know. So our goal is to give people an order of magnitude for budgeting purposes and to decide whether they're going to feel comfortable making an offer on this house or whether their offer is at the right number. So we will give a range of 100%. So if we talk about a roof, we might say $5,000 to $10,000. When we talk about a furnace in our market, we usually say $3,500 to $7,000. So do you see how we give that whole 100% range? Clearly not an estimate. And people say, why aren't you more accurate? I said, because on any given day, contractors' quotes will vary by 300% at least on a given job, depending on all kinds of variables that we don't have any input on. And secondly, what we're trying to do is help you make an order of magnitude decision. So if you know that the roof is, let's say, $5,000 to $10,000 for budgeting purposes, that's fine. And some people go down the middle and say, oh, that's probably $7,500 then. We have a fairly high confidence level that when you give a range like that, we can always find a contractor who will give a price somewhere in that range. So I said in that it's hard to do. It's a little hard to do, but it's not as hard as people think if you use approaches like that. And so that's one of the things we do to stay out of jail. And it has, touch wood, worked very well for us for a very long time. So when I talk about providing repair costs, I am not talking about giving a specific number in a quote. I hope that helps a little bit.
Fantastic. And I think this would be a perfect comment. Would you ever be on the hook? So if you gave a ballpark range of say 6 to 8,000, happen to be 10, do you find that you can potentially come back and you're on the hook for the extra 2? Or is it just one of those things that doesn't really happen in that regard?
It doesn't really happen, strangely. And I understand the question, and it's a great question, and it's absolutely fair question. The strange thing is, it doesn't seem to come back and bite us. And as I say, I'm touching wood as I say that because I have a habit of jinxing myself. But no, it has not been a huge issue. And again, it's perhaps because of that range. The other thing is, occasionally when challenged, if somebody goes and if your community is like ours, contractors will charge more in different neighborhoods, sort of more expensive neighborhoods. Their pricing chart seems to change a little bit. So sometimes people will get quotes that are beyond our range, but then what we'll do is say, well, then you might try these contractors. And we don't recommend contractors, but when we're trying to get out of a jam and say, here's somebody who will probably work within your thing, and make it clear there's no financial arrangement you have with these people. They're not giving you a referral fee. There is nothing going on. But if they're telling you they can't get a contractor and your price is wrong, we will sometimes direct them, or we'll direct them to whether it's Home Advisor, whether it's Thumbtack, whether it is HomeStars. There are lots of those kinds of companies that you can send people to, and they can generally get a quote that is within your range. And again, we have not had a big challenge on that. And it's looking at it from the outside in, I quite get your question. I quite understand. It's super logical. It's just, and maybe we're an anomaly, but not my sense, but we just have not had a problem.
Thank you for that, Alan. And I think with that, we have just passed the 10 o'clock mark. I think it's a good time to cap off. Thank you so much for everyone for your participation and tuning in. It's been a great evening, a lot of good information. We've got a lot of people thanking you, sir, for all the feedback. I'll be sure to send along to that to you later on. Any sort of parting words, sir?
I did want to say, and I think it's funny, I get some feedback along this line as well, but I don't know if any of you understand how challenging Brian's job is, making all this happen and facilitating and managing the questions and filtering them through and asking very focused questions and keeping things on track and providing the follow-on, arranging the CEUs and all that stuff. There is a ton of background work that goes into these that Brian does a large share of, and so my thanks to him for making my life a whole lot easier and hopefully for making your evening better. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody hanging around. This is a long stretch, and we should probably explore doing these in a little bit less time because it's a pretty significant commitment of people's time in the evening. It's you've been at this now for 2 hours, and I absolutely thank you for it. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.